Good morning, everyone. My name is Katarzyna Czernek-Marszałek. I work at the University of Economics in Katowice in Poland, and I have a great pleasure to share with you some of the findings of my empirical research that I've been conducting in tourism sector. The occasion why I was invited to present some of the findings of the research that I done individually and with my co-authors, with my team, research team, is the Tourism Week that is organized in Katowice as part of the event European City of Science, Katowice 2024. At the beginning, when I was invited to present some of my research findings connected to tourism sector, I was wondering what can be interesting for you. General audience, not only scientists, but people who are maybe just interested in the sector and this type of activity. And I thought that maybe the issue that can be important and interesting for you is connected to social relationships, because in our life, private life, I think many of us, or even all of us, social relationships are very, very important. But I was thinking about presenting their role in business, in tourism business, from the positive and negative side, because social relationships in business in general can be very useful, which I would like to show, but have also their dark side. So I thought that maybe presenting to you my interest in this topic from the beginning, when I was conducting the first project, not related directly to social relationships, and then focusing on other projects where social relationships in tourism were analyzed directly. This may be something that would be interesting for you. So let's start. Building bridges, the role of social relationships in tourism. Building bridges relates to positive aspects connected to tourism sector and social relationships used in it. However, as you would be able to see, there are also some dark sides. I will relate to three research projects. All of them are financed by National Science Center. The first is entitled Social Network Analysis and its Application for Research on Cooperation Determinants in Tourism Sector. This is the first project which was done by me individually, where I was, I would say, I started to interest in this topic, and this topic came to me as a potentially important and interesting issue to research. So I was inspired with this by this issue. And then we've got two other projects. The second is directly connected to social relationships, but not only in tourism, because also in three other creative sectors. The project is entitled Social Relations as a Stimulant of Organizational Innovativeness, the context of inter-organizational cooperation in selected creative sectors. This project is done not only by myself, but also by my colleagues, Professor Patrycja Klimas, Dr. Dagmara Wójcik, and Dr. Patrycja Juszczyk. And the third project done by me individually, Social Embeddedness in Interorganizational Relations, a comparative study of entrepreneurs in the tourism sector. So, how did it start? how did it happen that I got interest in this topic, that I felt inspired by this topic. The first project that I would like to relate to in this context is the project that was focused on cooperation in tourism sector. First of all, a cooperation in tourist region, with the example that I used being Beskidzka 5. Beskidzka 5, this is a cooperation between 5 municipalities located in the south of Poland. These are Szczyrk, Wisła, Ustroń, Brenna and Istebna, and some time ago local authorities of those 5 municipalities they came to the conclusion that it would be very good to promote one another in order to attract tourists to come to this area. Each of the municipality has its own very unique, nice attractions, and local authorities thought, that was wise of course, that it can be more attractive to potential tourists than the individual offer promoted by individual municipality outside. So this was cooperation mainly between local authorities, and this cooperation is assessed as a very nice one, as a very well performed. And I was wondering whether this cooperation in this region only relates to local authorities, or maybe also other entrepreneurs and entities that are engaged in serving tourists, they also do cooperate, because I didn't know what is the level of this cooperation. This is important because we can imagine that we are tourists, we come to the tourist destination and we buy not only accommodation, we buy not only tourist attractions, some trips around the city, but we buy also food, insurance, we rent a car, so we buy different goods and services that are directly and indirectly connected to tourism, and different types of entrepreneurs, entities. So local authorities, but also private sector entities and non-profit sector entities are responsible for providing an offer which completely in a total aspect will give us comprehensive, interesting offer assessed as satisfactory for potential tourists. So cooperation between not only local authorities but also other entities from those municipalities represented by those authorities is important when we are talking about tourism. So I was interested in analyzing cooperation which is intra and intermunicipal, so inside municipalities and between municipalities, but when I'm talking about between municipalities, I'm not only thinking about local authorities but also different sectors, so also inter and intra-sectoral, public, private and non-profit sectors. So I was wondering, what is the level of cooperation within and between municipalities, what entities are the most and the least involved in cooperation, and what is the reason for example, the highest and the lowest involvement. And to analyze this cooperation, I used social network analysis. This is a tool which is very useful to visualize the network of relationships. In this case, this relationship was cooperation. And not only to visualize, but also to calculate some parameters that allow us to assess the whole network. And this combined with qualitative analysis gave me some kind of picture of cooperation in Beskidzka 5. And the the picture that reflects the cooperation in those 5 municipalities, the graph, we call it graph, the network, is presented here on the slide. As you can see, we have 5 different colors. It is the color reflects the entity from a particular municipality. Together to this research, what you could see in the former slide, together in this research there were analyzed 225 entities from all 5 municipalities, 45 from each municipality. They represented those 3 sectors: private, public, and non-profit, and each entity from each municipality got the number, and here has also color that reflects relates to a particular municipality. So as you can see, those colors here are not mixed. So we have something that we call clusters. So we have 5 groups of smaller networks where entities cooperate with themselves. So if those colors for example, are mixed, then we say that cooperation is not only inside the municipality, but also between entities from other municipalities. But here we can see that entities cooperate mainly with themselves, with other entities from the same municipality, because we can see different clusters of different colors. It was also reflected in some numbers and parameters used in social network analysis. For instance, density, clustering coefficient, diameter, average distance, and path length. I wouldn't go deeply into that because this is not in this type of presentation. It's not this aim, you know, but in general those parameters are used to assess the coherence of a network. For instance, when we talk about the first one, density, it can be from 0 to 100%. So 100% would mean that all actors in the network cooperate with any other actor in the network, so everybody cooperates with everybody, which is of course hard to achieve, and even not needed, because we don't need to cooperate sometimes with entities where there is no sense of that, there is no point of that. So of course this 100% is rather not achieved in this type of relationship. But of course, if this level of density is low, it means that still this cooperation is on lower level, and for the whole region it was about 4.5%. But what was also visible was that in different municipalities, those levels of cooperation, those levels, of density of cooperation were different. For instance, in Wisła and in Istebna, these are marked in red color, this level was higher than in Szczyrk. And that was something that was one of the conclusions from my research, and I was interested why in those 2 municipalities cooperation, the level of cooperation is higher than in other. And I asked about this my interviewees. those entrepreneurs, and not only entrepreneurs, because public and non-profit sector entities were also in this research. So I asked them why this cooperation, perhaps why in their opinion in Wisła and in EastEbNet's cooperation is higher, what they think about this and what they think about cooperation in their municipality relating to other municipalities. And they claimed that a very important reason why cooperation is developed maybe more in Wisła than in Ustroń is the fact that people in Wisła, they know themselves. They are located in relatively small area and they have a lot of social connections. So we call it in science that they are socially embedded in relationships with other entities. So the level of their social embeddedness is higher, which means that they know a lot of people, they know who can be a interesting potential partner, where to find this kind of partner. And one of interviewees said, well, Ustroń is such a big city that I don't know if they know each other there, if they meet. Besides, there are so many large entities that they are anonymous. And in Wisła, despite the fact that it is vast, everyone knows each other. So the conclusion from this research was that the reasons of cooperation, high level or lower level, were different, but the reasons for still the low level of cooperation mentioned by interviewees were low awareness of the need of cooperation, high level of competition, but also, what is interesting, a sense of local identity so strong that it makes the community of local entrepreneurs close to other entities. What does it mean? It means that the same factor, so the fact that we are strongly socially embedded, we have a lot of connections, we appreciate very strongly relations in business with entities who we know, and also in our private life. So we are focusing on cooperation only with those that are our colleagues, friends, with whom we have social relationships. That makes that we are close to other entrepreneurs, for example, external entrepreneurs who come to Wisła from other regions. One of interviewees said, in general, our Wisła community is sometimes, maybe less so. It is often thought that we are closed in a general sense, that the inhabitants of Wisła are such a closed community. It is said by people from, for example, Ustroń, Cieszyn, that is difficult to get along with the Wisła people here. And I wanted to dig deeper the situation in Wisła, and I invited to the research entities who were members of Wisła, Wiślańska Tourism Organization. This is an organization which is aimed at promoting Wisła as attractive tourist destination, and I wanted to ask them whether they cooperate, those members of Wiślańska Tourism Organization, whether they, as representing their businesses, because there are many of entrepreneurs, but not only, of course, but representing organizations, whether they cooperate with themselves, and if yes, what makes this cooperation easier, whether this will be, for example, this factor like social embeddedness or social relationships, or whether this factor makes cooperation harder, or the lack of being a socially embedded actor. And here you can see on this slide, I will show it to you with the laser here. We can see a group of entities marked in red in the center of the network, and some of entities, number 7, number 30, 43, and some other, marked in green color. And these are the first group. These are central actors from the point of cooperation. So these are the most engaged in cooperation actors in Wiślańska Tourist Organization. And those in the green color, these are peripheral actors, those who are the least engaged in cooperation. However, I'm now thinking about cooperation not in a form of a Wiślańska Tourism Organization, but in a form of cooperation connected with their individual organizations, business they run. What can be said based on identification of those two groups of actors? When we calculate some parameters connected to social network analysis, especially connected to centrality of actors, we can identify those peripheral and central actors, and they are indeed identified here in this table: 9 peripheral actors, 9 central actors, in this first and in the second group, also reflected in this graph that I presented before. When I asked about the reasons why they do not cooperate, those peripheral entities, they mentioned different reasons. Like, for instance, geographical location. The lady said that she is located very high in the mountains, so she cannot cooperate with anybody because she has to have everything on place. And also one of entrepreneurs said that he thinks about closing the business, so he doesn't want to cooperate with anybody at this moment, and he doesn't want to generate any costs connected with this. But out of 9 entities, 5, number 6, 7, 26, 27, and 30, they said that the reason why they do not cooperate in their businesses with other entities is the lack of social embeddedness in the local community. These were very often entrepreneurs who came to Wisła from the outside, from other regions, who were for a short time have been doing their businesses in Wisła. They didn't know people, they didn't know who can be a potential good partner, and they mentioned that this lack of social embeddedness, the lack of social relationships, a lot of social relationships with other entities, definitely is a factor that makes this business cooperation harder, even to start this cooperation. When I was talking with one lady who was a peripheral actor, I asked, did you feel a little different after moving here a few years ago from Poznań? And she said, yes, it was 3.5 years ago, and we still feel the difference because no one is trying to call us, for example, to ask if we have any rooms available. I don't believe that those entrepreneurs located in the center of Wisła, who have regular customers, do not have periods when they have everything booked. They have our emails and our phone numbers, but there has never been such a phone call. Do you have any free rooms? There has never been such a referral. And also I asked those actors who were identified as central actors in network of cooperation, why they cooperate so strongly, what is the reason of that. They mentioned that desire to provide complementary goods and services, being an active entrepreneur who appreciates the importance of cooperation, formal obligations towards the local community, like local authorities, for instance. But what was the factor that was common for all of them was the fact that they were all strongly socially embedded. All of them were living in Wisła for a long time, were very often born there. They knew people. They even made this kind of statements about themselves that they are strongly connected, socially connected, that they are embedded strongly in this community. So it shows that this element, social embeddedness, is very important for business cooperation. After this project, like I said, it was an inspiration for me regarding this topic. Of course, some other questions emerged and came to my mind. For instance, what are the sources of social relationships used in business? So where those people meet, in what circumstances, and how, after all, it translates into business relationships, which are important for those entities, like, for example, cooperation. What are the building blocks of social relationships used in business? I mean here constitutive elements of social relationships, without which social relationship wouldn't be important for business relationship. What is the importance of social relations in tourism? What are the benefits of social relationships? What are there any negative consequences of using social relationships, and if so, what are they? One of them I presented. It means being too strongly socially embedded that we are close to other entities from the outside. And also are these sources and building blocks and the importance of social relationships in other sectors of the economy similar or different from those in the tourism sector? And those questions led not only me but also my colleagues to another project that we did together. And the project is broader. We made I would say 2 steps forward, because we not only focused in this project on tourism sector, but also on 3 other sectors being part of cultural, creative sectors, and also we wanted to check whether and how social relationships influence interorganizational cooperation, but also organizational innovativeness. And this is done in this project, social relations as a stimulant of organizational innovativeness, the context of interorganizational cooperation in selected creative sectors. And here in this project, we analyzed except tourism, which was reflected here by cultural tourism, in particular culinary routes. We analyzed also computer and video games, museums, performing arts, reflected by theaters. We analyzed whether, how, and with what effect the social relationships of owners, managers, employees of organizations in creative sectors affect not only interorganizational cooperation, like I said before, but also organizational innovativeness. And the research team assumed that this impact of social relationships on organizational innovativeness could be direct or indirect. When I'm talking about indirect impact, I mean through interorganizational cooperation. So firstly, we assume that social relationships between entities representing organizations, thanks to the trust between partners, they facilitate risk-taking, investing in projects that are maybe unconventional, and therefore they facilitate innovative ideas and foster the flow of knowledge, which is very important, especially tacit knowledge, very difficult to codify, to write it down. It's very important for organizational innovativeness. And the second assumption was that interorganizational cooperation, more or less formalized, is important driver of this innovativeness. We put three hypotheses that social relations have positive impact on interorganizational cooperation, that interorganizational cooperation has a positive impact on the organizational innovativeness, and that social relations have a positive impact on organizational innovativeness. So we analyzed relationships between social relationships, interorganizational cooperation, and organizational innovativeness. And the research was multi-staged. We first started with the literature review. We analyzed after generating a lot of text, because 1,525, we in a detailed way analyzed 319 publications, and then we did empirical research that was qualitative research, is in a form of individual in-depth interviews with 63 representatives of 4 creative sectors and 5 focus group interviews. These are interviews with more than one person, so with a group of people. In total, it was 30 interviewees in all those 5 focus group interviews, again representing those 4 creative sectors. And also we did quantitative analysis in the form of, we conducted survey on a sample of 688 entities from those 4 creative sectors. Of course, cooperation, interorganizational cooperation was important in all those 4 sectors. In general, the reasons why they cooperated was providing goods and services to customers, reduction of costs, entering new markets, survival in crisis situations, and one of those situations was COVID-19, because the research was conducted during pandemic. So very often our interviewees stress that this is important element. And going down into those 4 sectors, this cooperation was based on some elements that are very specific to the sector, and also partners were very specific because of the sector features and the aims of activity. Regarding museums, there was a cooperation was done because of the need to preserve the cultural heritage of the region, taking care of its identity, and cooperation. One of the forms of cooperation was mutual lending of works of art and monuments between museums. Regarding computer and video games industry, this was creation, promotion, and sale of games, creation of VR and AR applications, computer games, and cooperation with clients, with translators, publishers, recording studios as well. Regarding performing arts, so theaters, these were joint co-productions, organization of joint festivals, exchange of experiences as well. And regarding tourism, culinary routes, and this was providing customers with products and services based on cultural heritage of the culinary route, exchange of experiences, and cooperation, for example, with local guides, farmers. And what are the positive and negative consequences of using social relations in business activities in all four creative industries? We tried to make some comparisons between them. So I would focus some results for the tourism sector, and also I will relate to three other sectors as well. For sure, in all four sectors, we can say that social relationships are a very, very important element for business activity. One of our interviewees said, the restaurant or hotel itself is only a building, exactly in the sense of the word. And in fact, the company itself, in this case, is created by people. So interpersonal or social relations are the basis for developing this business. These relationships often influence the choices of our customers or business partners. In our case, relationships are the basis. And we identified many examples of benefits of social relationships for a business. Some of them I will present. For instance, access to resources, which can be easier, cheaper, faster, especially to resources that are unique, that are difficult to access. Flexibility of behavior in a situation of uncertainty, thanks to, for instance, trust. Shaping common identity, reduction of transaction costs, so costs of searching partner, controlling a partner. If this is a partner that is a trusted person, then we can avoid those costs. Easier acquisition and transfer of knowledge from partners. And giving voice to our interviewees. One of them mentioned about benefits connected to limiting inappropriate behavior. This was during one of our focus group interviews when we invited people from the whole Poland to a meeting, and our interviewee said, as if the industry is small, everyone knows each other here. This meeting is accidental, and I think I know two faces at least. And it also shows some scale of this industry. So fooling someone out is not in anyone's interest. So these words show that those people in those businesses, they know themselves, and if something goes wrong, if somebody behaves in an inappropriate way, if somebody does something wrong, people from the community, from the business community will know, and this person can be punished. So this is also the role of social relationships. Increase of work efficiency. So if we invest time and energy counting that it will help us in our future work and make it more pleasant and fun and more effective, I personally wouldn't like to work if I had to work with people who are good, but I don't like them. I don't want to work with them. And something that was very important from the point of view of the aim of our project, that was the increase of innovativeness. One of our interviewees said, it is probably easier to do something new with partners if we have known each other for a long time, and when this company that trusts us, or the other way, will say, let's do something different. Let's approach this topic completely from the other side. Without these relationships, I think it will be more difficult to initiate such an idea, to push it forward. But our research also presented this dark side of social relationships, and this time in this project it was not only related to tourism sector, but also all other three sectors where those negative consequences of social relationships were identified. First of all, a limitation of innovativeness and lower adaptability. The lack of fresh look, we call it in the literature collective blindness. So what I mentioned in the context of tourism before, that we cooperate mainly with actors that we know, because we trust them, for instance. We know how they act, how they work, and we are close to other potentially interesting partners that would bring something fresh, something new to cooperation. Then opportunistic behavior, which is the situation when we have a partner and he or she trusts us and we do something that is good for us, but is not good, is harmful for the other part, for the other side, but he or she doesn't expect this because there is trust between us. Then interpersonal conflicts limiting productivity and creativity, limitation of economic rationality and efficiency, breakup of business cooperation and high costs associated with that. And again, to giving voice to some of our interviewees, here is a relatively long citation, but I think important from the point of view of the features of creative sector. Regarding interpersonal conflicts limiting productivity and creativity. Such conflicts can hit the smoothness of a project very hard because they cause a bit of distraction from the goal of working on the project, and they sort of focus people around some negative emotions. It is known, especially in the creative industry, you need to keep a lot of peace of mind because otherwise productivity and creativity suffer a lot. And it is productivity and creativity in our industry that require such energy to maintain that is especially after a few years of experience, it is already a bit of struggle with burnout, and you have to stimulate yourself very strongly in order to maintain such high motivation and high productivity. And such disruptions in relationships with people, with friends, with partners can be one of the reasons, for example, for wanting to change jobs, because we no longer like it, because we no longer have such nice relationships. Also, which is what is important from the point, the aim of our project is the limitation of innovativeness and lower adaptability. Our interviewee said, one of our interviewees said, I think it can happen like in human relationships, that this repetitive nature of relationships can close our eyes to other potential relationships. And it's also the case that perhaps some issue of being used to one person or one entity sometimes makes us miss other potential relationship possibilities. And limitation of economic rationality and efficiency, bearing some alternative costs, additional costs. One of the interviewees said, maybe even the offer that someone would do the sport, don't know, faster, better, that somewhere these personal considerations decided, and not some cold calculation. So maybe here it is disadvantage right now. But sometimes we decide to work with an entity because we know someone there, or we have some connections, or we know how to work with them. Of course, some other questions were put in this project that I mentioned about before, like what are sources and building blocks of social relationships used in creative industries, in those 4 industries that we analyzed. And sources of social relations that we identified are as follows. So these circumstances, places, opportunities where those entities met, which was important for building future business relationships, including cooperation. So previous and current jobs, school, university, graduation together, being neighbors, common origin from the same municipality, region, or the country, family, friends, colleagues, mutual acquaintances, shared experiences, shared passions and interests, very important in creative industry, joint membership in industry organizations, partnership in meetings, industry conferences, but also some social meetings as well, some fairs, for example, food fairs in the case of culinary routes, acquaintances with a source that is difficult to determine. So sometimes they even couldn't say when they met, how they met, because they didn't remember, so many years have passed. Recommendation from another trusted person, religious, cultural, political, other affiliation, and a common goal for action on a cause, past or present. And I will relate only to some of them to give you some picture of the role of those sources and type of those sources in different sectors, especially of course in tourism, in tourism sector. So regarding previous and current jobs, it proved to be especially important in tourism sector. In other sectors, it was important, but in this, it was very often stressed and strongly stressed as important element. This was work in, for example, local offices, thanks to which information was obtained on, for example, the credibility of other entities like producers of local products. One of our interviewees said, "My previous and current workplace plays a big role because even the fact that my colleagues stayed in the office, I can still ask for help in searching, and I always know that I will get a call from the office or from the agricultural advisory center. The manufacturer is proven and really does what he offers." So getting tacit knowledge, knowledge which is very difficult to get, was possible thanks to relationships, social relationships built in previous, for example, workplaces. This was interesting source of social relationships in different sectors. School, university, graduation together. In tourism, it was important, but on the level of small towns. So when those entrepreneurs that we invited to the research, they mentioned that they finished the same primary, secondary schools in the same municipalities. They used those relationships built then in the past. They used them in the business, but in the case of 3 other sectors, this was the source important, but related to higher education institutions. In the case of computer and video games, people from the so-called game dev, they mentioned that they know themselves very often from studies in the field of computer science, Academy of Fine Arts, or dedicated faculties for the game industry. Regarding museums, they mentioned that they know themselves from scientific clubs in the history studies. And very interesting source of social relationships in theaters were drama schools, because these schools are very specific, because there are small groups of students who sometimes even a few persons. So they spend a lot of time together. They mentioned they used this expression, we work on relations, we work on emotions. So this brings people together, and this source of relationships, social relationships, was used then in business activity, because those people, for example, from one group in drama schools, after some time they became directors of theaters and started cooperation, because they knew themselves. It was easier for them in that case. And very important in all four sectors were shared passions, interests. In culinary roots, it was very important when we are talking about relationships between local artists established thanks to common passion for local heritage. In the case of computer and video games, employees treat work as a hobby. Playing games is a passion for them. This is something that connects them, that can be a very good source of starting social relationships. In museums, passion for cultural heritage. In theaters, relations between artists called art enthusiasts. And regarding to building blocks, we identified after conducting long multi-staged qualitative and quantitative research that was also used to create a new scale for analyzing social relationships. We identified six building blocks of social relationships. So constitutive elements of social relationships, without which they do not exist, or they wouldn't be important for the business activity. So here each of them is very complex, is created of smaller items, like for example the first one, emotional intensity, is based mainly on trust, and we identified, like I said, emotional intensity, community of interests, shared identity, private contacts, repeatability of relations, and industry meetings. I wouldn't relate to all of them because it's not the aim of this presentation. I would like only to give you some picture of the situation in different sectors. For instance, if we are talking about the first one, emotional intensity, it was crucial in each of the four sectors, including tourism. It was important mainly during crisis situations like COVID, due to trust that is need to act quickly in an unconventional way, flexible way. And it was stressed in all four sectors, and also in all four sectors it was stressed that it can have a negative impact on business when those emotions such as intimacy, sympathy to the partner have a negative impact on work. For example, in the public museums, it was stressed that it can be negative when emotional intensity becomes more important than procedural issues. So this is again potentially negative side of social relationships, of emotional intensity. If those emotions, positive emotions, if those emotions in general are positive, it's fine. But if this intensity is too strong, then some kind of line can be stepped, and this can lead to some problems. And regarding positive role of this aspect, especially trust, one of our interviewees said, maybe I will tell you what it's like between winemakers, or at least those between whom there is trust. It happened more than once, not twice, both in our vineyard and also in other vineyards, that something went very wrong. For example, 1,000 liters of wine was almost to be poured out, and it must be trust when we call another winemaker and ask if he had such a situation and if he knows how to remedy. This trust must be high if he tells us what to do, and if and it is such a one way that if we do what he says, there will no be turning back. That it will either work or it will not work. And regarding negatives, also we identified this dark side in all four sectors, creative sectors. It's simple because if we like someone, regardless of whether it's a person of the same sex or a different sex, it's easier for us to work together. Situations can get complicated when this emotional relationships turns into something more. So it's good if we can set a certain boundary in these relationships and stick to it. It is good to specify it at the beginning of cooperation if necessary, because it may interfere later. And I will relate to one element more from those building blocks. This is shared identity, which proved to be very important in all sectors, other in a different way. Very important in culinary routes based on local regional identity. Relatively similar in museums. It depends on the location, region, often very important constituting element connecting entities where, for example, the representatives of museums were located on one geographical location. This shared identity was very important then. It was also important for the activity of theaters, reflected in artistic programs, supported, for example, then by local authorities, if this shared identity element there existed. But very interesting, it was completely in a completely different way perceived in the computer and video games sector. The shared identity was not identified here in the relation to a city or region, but it was visible on the higher level because of the global activity of entities from the sector. It was more often understood as a community of players or Polish game dev, and the shared identity was related to this kind of elements. And also there are negative aspects connected with shared identity that we indicated in our research relating to all four sectors. Here one of our interviewees said, "I would only add a bit for contrast that the community can also exclude. That is, if you create a too hermetic environment, theaters, for example, also have such tendencies to close themselves off in a certain trend, in certain artists. Then we also try to break it down." So this is something that was identified earlier in my former research regarding tourism sector, but was also identified in those three other sectors. Here the example was connected to performing arts, I mean theaters. And to conclude, regarding relations between those three elements, social relationships, cooperation, interorganizational cooperation, and organizational innovativeness, by doing research, especially regarding hypothesis testing, regarding quantitative analysis, we can formulate the following conclusions from this project. First of all, social relationships stimulate interorganizational cooperation. At the same time, their potential impact may be greater by minimizing some social relationships building blocks identified in our research. I mean here emotional intensity and shared identity, and the negative sides of both of them I presented to you. Our studies have shown that these two building blocks can significantly, and it was calculated by us in this project, negatively affect interorganizational cooperation. Too strong emotional intensity based, for example, on trust in a partner or sympathy, as well as too strong sense of common identity, instead of fostering cooperation, can cause conflicts or cause entities to establishing cooperation with other unknown, less known partners. The second conclusion, research has shown that interorganizational cooperation fosters organizational innovativeness as long as it is stimulated by social relations. And this is very interesting conclusion from our research, showing that the impact of interorganizational cooperation on organizational innovativeness is insignificant when this cooperation is not based on social relations. So that is really interesting. And thirdly, social relations do not directly stimulate organizational innovativeness, which may be caused, for example, by the negative impact of previously mentioned building blocks of social relations, like emotional intensity or shared identity, on organizational innovativeness. So these are those relations between those three types of three elements in all relating to all four creative creative industries. We believe that our findings can be useful for practitioners because they can give them some impression about positive and negative role of social relationships and the role of some sources or building blocks of social relationships. And also we believe that this can be research important for the economy because of the role of creative industry in the global economy. So we hope that our findings will be useful for practitioners as well. And of course, there were some additional questions that were identified after this project, and this leads me to the third project. For instance, I was wondering how social embeddedness, how the role of social relationships can be described, can be analyzed and described in not mountain municipalities, culinary routes in tourism, but in large cities. So there are no studies that would apply to entities not only from small tourist towns, but from those larger tourist destinations. And this is the third project, Social Embeddedness in Interorganizational Relations, a comparative study of entrepreneurs in tourism sector that is run by me individually. And in this project, I would like to check what is the role of social relationships in places when where the level of anonymity is definitely higher than in those small tourist destinations where people maybe not necessarily know themselves from schools and from other places which are located in smaller geographical location. So the research is conducted in 4 large Polish cities, Warsaw, Krakow, Poznań and Gdańsk. And we will find out what is the result of this research, because it's actually at this moment done. Thank you so much for listening, for being with me. I hope that this can be interesting for you.